Yeah, let's focus on the limo stop now. It's mainly the limo stop, because if they can't get that right, then they can't get anything right. So, Larry, you ready to do some motorcycle cop stuff?
Yeah, well, first of all, I wanted to just start by commenting on what he said about Greer's turn, and which has been completely erased from the Zapruder film. And this was confirmed by Roy Trulley. If you read Roy Trulley's Warren Commission testimony, you'll see that he mentioned that Greer just barely missed the curb and running over people that were standing there right next to him. So that was the beginning of this massively edited Zapruder film, where the first 130 frames have been totally removed. Okay, now he said that the limo stopped for 2 to 3 seconds, and but we now know that it was closer to 20 or 30 seconds according to the Newcomb tapes. And it's interesting. I want to make a comment here on the Newcomb tapes, because recently I read in JFKFacts.org where they were asking what were the most important recent developments on the JFK case, and nobody mentioned the Newcomb tapes. And I think the Fred Newcomb tapes that we started presenting last year are perhaps the most important find in the JFK case, because...
Well, Larry, I believe that's the website where, when it came out, my website, Assassination Science, was listed among the worst. Right. JFK, and the reason given was because I believe the Zapruder film has been massively altered. Now, how dumb is that?
That's right, but as we all now know, these tapes that Fred Newcomb had stashed away, and that his son Tyler made available to us, which had never been transcribed, and now with modern audio techniques, that we were able to extract a lot of the information in these tapes. And the information there is unequivocal. You know, I mean, there's just no way to dispel and refute what the motorcycle cops, who were the immediate witnesses around the limousine. And what
the problem isn't with Assassination Science, it's with JFK Facts, which is a bit absurd, because facts have to be verifiable claims, and to deny that the Zapruder film is altered is to ignore verified findings that prove its alteration. So we have a lot of operators here throwing around a lot of, let us just say, non-truths.
Yeah,
I just happen to have the case with me right now.
Hold on. Yeah, I just wanted to segue into what Gary's going to present now, by just briefly mentioning that Hargis ran in front of Shaney on his way up to the knoll. And Shaney clearly states this in the interviews with in the Newcomb tapes. And Hargis himself said that the limo stopped for 4 to 6 seconds. And he made a comment on this, that you won't read about this in the Warren Commission, okay, because it's not in the Exton film. And Jackson said the caravan stopped on 2 different occasions in 2 different phone interviews. He also saw 5 to 6 agents dismount from the Queen Mary and run past the limo with guns drawn. None of this is seen in the Exton film, okay? So Jackson himself stated that the film had been altered. It's been cut up. Okay, so
we don't.
Now.
Yeah, we don't. Let him tell us that.
As you say, okay. 2 seconds. I just wanted to.
He stood at that car and they started accelerating the guy at that time, and he missed that step. But I would argue that this didn't happen, but I didn't see it. I actually read that film, but it's good up.
Did y'all hear that? It's been cut up. It's been edited. Let me play that a couple of more times.
That film, but it's good up. It's been edited. I actually read that picture.
That's Douglas Jackson.
Here we go. One more time.
lot of it cut out.
A lot of it's been cut out. It's been edited. It's been cut up. They didn't show the limo stop. All right, so there's the first evidence for Mr. DiEugenio to refute. So go ahead, Larry, tell us some more.
Well, besides this, Davis Ellis, who was the supervisor of the motorcycle escort, spoke to James Chaney, and he spoke to Douglas Jackson and everybody, and he found out that a kid picked up a piece of skull that had fallen at his feet, and that a Secret Service agent snatched it away from the kid, he took the piece of skull and he threw it back into the limo before the convoy sped on under the triple overpass. So this is another instance of information that we have from immediate witnesses who were there, who apparently some people seem to keep wanting to ignore.
Right. How about B.J. Martin? Let's see what he had to say.
The film is a brutal film. It's an 8mm film that was done there.
All right.
Take a look at it and I'll give you a call so we can see it.
All right, I will do.
Because we see a lot of things in there. In fact, we see one thing which is very disturbing, that the car doesn't even stop in that film. Doesn't even slow down. No, somebody's mucking around with something.
I was sworn that it was times that he tried to get up, that the car stopped.
All right, now here we go. Just to make sure they didn't catch this part here.
Tried to get up, that the car stopped, that the car stopped, that the car stopped.
That the car stopped. Okay, so all right, that happened to be B.J. Martin. Anybody want to comment? Larry, Don?
Oh, you've got better tapes on that. Douglas Jackson said twice that the limo stopped. He even talked about 5 or 6 agents running past the limo with guns drawn, and none of this is seen in the Zapruder film. So you've got a lot more material there, Gary.
All right, well, how about Bobby Hargis?
Do you remember how long it stopped when it was on Elm Street?
Oh, you mean that first time?
Right.
Only about 3-4 seconds, maybe times.
I say it stopped for about 5 or 6 seconds.
Yeah, but you won't find out.
Don't they claim that it stopped?
No, I don't think he didn't. You've seen a rolling stop, haven't you? It's going less than 1 mile an hour.
Right.
Well, that's what he was doing. He wasn't completely stopped, so dead still.
So how many seconds?
3-4 seconds, maybe fast.
I say it stopped for about 5 or 6 seconds.
Yeah, but you won't find out.
Wait, what?
4 seconds, maybe fast.
I say it stopped for about 5 or 6 seconds.
Yeah, but you won't find out.
That's Bobby Hargis talking from the grave to you and I. So there's my exhibit. All right, so we're going to have James Chaney next. So you want to comment on that one, fellas?
Well, yeah, the limo definitely stopped, and we don't see that. And it also, Rich was talking about after the limo finally got going again, he had to pass another car. You don't see any of that in the Zapruder film. You don't see any of it.
That's right.
All right, we'll do Douglas Jackson. Here we go. You know what? We really are having a hard time commenting because these guys are saying it all right here.
That's right.
I liked it. The whole thing is, I thought that caravan stopped, and it didn't.
Wait, I just got to play that again. I thought that caravan stopped, but it didn't.
I liked it. The whole thing is, I thought that caravan stopped, and it didn't.
Right, I was just speaking with Jim and the Bobby before Hargis and Chaney.
Yeah.
We sort of went over a couple of points, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the points we did discuss with them.
So all of the police officers are all saying the same thing, that, we're happy you sent us the Z film, but there was this big stop, and it just doesn't happen to be in there. And it's just devastating to anyone who can stand in this day and time and say, Robert Groden says, it's authentic, so we might as well have to go with it. These are the police officers drenched in blood and brain matter. All right, so we got James Chaney, and then I've got one more montage after that.
What's the car at the stop sign? That's the heavy cars, one of the higher. And it was because it was almost months after 5 months late. I don't know what I thought. I don't hurt when I was
Well, this is a little difficult. I'm going to see what I can do about that one. Tell us what we're hearing there, Larry, because I know it's inaudible.
Well, it's pretty audible when you break it down with special software that enhances audio, which is definitely available to anybody who wants to break it down. But he's clearly saying that the limo stopped and that Bobby Hargis ran in front of him on his way up to the grassy knoll. Now, in order for that to have happened, they're talking about both limos stopping completely, for him to have dismounted his motorcycle and ran in between the two limos. When he says in between the two limos, he's talking about the JFK limo, which was the Lincoln Continental, and the Queen Mary, which was the Cadillac. Dr. Fetzer, do you have anything to say about this?
Well, Larry, you're making excellent points, but of course, people like Jefferson Morley, Robert Groden, Josiah Thompson, Jim DiEugenio, Leno Sanik, their minds were made up. They don't want to be bothered with facts.
You mean by the motorcycle cops that were there? They just don't have time to listen to these guys. I mean, who the heck are they?
They don't have time for serious research. Anyone who has followed the development of research on the Zapruder film, from assassination science to murder in Dealey Plaza to the great Zapruder film house, understands the multitudinous of ways in which the film has been altered and changed, including, of course, in frames 374 and others. You can actually see the blowout, which has been concealed in earlier frames. But the duration and complexity of the limo stop is the coup de grace that puts an end to it all. And it's embarrassing that you have a website like JFK Facts that can't deal with the evidence. They aren't interested in facts. They're interested in smoke and mirrors, which is what they're pushing at JFK Facts. Grossly misnamed, tragic, abusive language.
And I have posted a couple of times on the JFK Facts the actual transcripts of from some of these motorcycle cops, and many people who have commented really accepted the information, but apparently they're not inclined to continue to propagate this information. Just, apparently they don't really care about this.
Larry, how come you haven't been a guest on Black Op Radio? I mean, a man who's uncovered tapes that were closest there would be the most welcome guy in the JFK community. What's the problem?
Well, apparently they don't want to hear about information that is being brought out by the actual people, witnesses who were there.
I mean, who are these James Chaney and Bobby Hargis guys?
Yeah, right.
I'm going to call it.
What would they know about a limo stop?
Right. And not only that, Jim, don't forget that they were never interviewed by any of the official investigative bodies, A, and B, up until 1975, when the FBI belatedly interviewed them. That is when they finally documented what they had gone through. And some of the information that we found there, was just totally ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, the FBI knew what it was doing by not interviewing the most important witnesses. They were covering it up. Lyndon was the principal facilitator of the assassination, J. Edgar of the cover-up.
That's right.
All right, Dr. Fetzer, we were in Dealey Plaza last year, and we actually have an exclusive interview here with Beverly Oliver, and see what she has to say about the motorcycle cops. Whoops.
Passed by, the shot had happened, the limousine had taken off, or it was about to take off, and the policeman on this side parked his bike, ran up the hill, and his bike fell over. Now, I don't remember seeing like going up the hill on the motorcycle, but I remember the one line.
His bike fell over. He stopped and ran between the limousine and up the hill. I didn't see that in the Z film there, Dr. Fetzer.
Well, gee, Gary, it must have blinked. Surely it must be there.
Yeah, but Bob Groden said it's legit, and wasn't he interviewed by Geraldo Rivera? So doesn't Bob know what he's talking about?
Oh man,
It was Groden who got the film onto Geraldo that led to the investigation by the HSCA, but it's all so embarrassing. I mean, the frauds, they just stick out like, sore thumbs, like they're smashing their thumb with a hammer again and again. Groden, Thompson,
I'm sorry.
Jefferson Morley, Jim DiEugenio, Leno Sanik. What are these people, nitwits?
Well, there's more witnesses. Let's don't talk to them. Let's talk to the witnesses. Hold on, we got more witnesses here to talk with.
Go for it, Gary.
Okay.
And I've always had a memory, matter of fact, I've had nightmares about it, of the sunlight on Kennedy and the explosion. The car almost coming to a stop, almost a dead stop.
But what I couldn't really believe that someone else mentioned was the car, and after that first shot, had come practically to a stop. And later on, in looking back, when I said I could not believe how well-trained Secret Service people reacted so slowly. I would have expected that from ordinary human beings, but I expected that they would react much quicker.
Those in the cars behind saw the presidential car.
It was just an instantaneous, sort of instant pause in the motorcade, momentary halt.
The car that's presently coming had been from the White House Suite in Washington. That car came to an immediate stop.
With the television screen out over noted, the car stopped momentarily during the corner to go by a small park right on the edge of town. We heard 3 shots. We heard the explosions. We didn't know what they were. And suddenly the motorcade slowed a little. There was a brief pause. Then the cars left the wounded man in Buffalo Hospital.
All right. Well, how about 9 witnesses right there in the montage?
Well, Gary, we already had a report from Vince Palomaro about witnesses to the limo stop and murder in Dealey Plaza. The number was about 60. And John Costello published a brilliant piece, a compilation of the witness evidence in what happened on Elm Street. The Eyewitnesses Speak in assassinationresearch.com, which he and I co-edit as a journal for advanced study of the death of JFK. Anyone can check it online, but worthies like Jim DiEugenio, Robert Groden, Leno Sanik, Tate Thompson, Jefferson Morley, I guess they just don't have time to bother with evidence.
Well, what about Malcolm Summers? Who the heck was he? Wait, wasn't he the guy that jumped on the Zapruder film on the ground? Let's see what he had to say about it.
I thought someone had threw a firecracker down on the ground just to be smart. But then they came, the procession kept coming. And then the second and the third shot rang out. Well, I knew it was being shot at. I knew that was what was happening. The car got right beside me where I was at. And it actually stopped momentarily. And I heard Jackie Kennedy say, "Oh, God, no, no." And I heard John Connolly say, "They're going to shoot us all."
Summers then ran into the Secret Service agent who never was.
There was a gentleman in a suit and a hat and tie, and he had a gun over his raincoat, and I could only see the barrel of it. He was just, and he said, "Y'all better not come up here." And he wasn't only talking to me, it was other people running there. You can get shot.
All right.
And it actually stopped.
What did he say?
It actually stopped.
Wait, what did he say?
And it actually stopped.
All right.
It actually stopped.
Somebody talk to us, Don. Go ahead.
Okay, I just want, before everything wraps up here, a few key areas where we know the Zapruder film has been massively altered. Okay, the turn from Houston on to Elm, it's just not even there in the exit. It's not even there. And every report I've ever heard, it echoes Rich De La Rosa, where Greer almost misses Elm Street completely, and he almost went down there's that little, the Elm Street annex that goes right in front of the Texas School Book building. So his tires ended up on the sidewalk. You see none of that. And then, of course, we've talked about the people in the background are larger than the people in the foreground. And then another key area to look at is with all the missing frames, Greer kept turning around to see what was going on in the back of the limo. but with all the missing frames, his head is whipping around at twice or more than the speed that he should be able to turn around. And then I think the last key, the last couple of key spots are, of course, the limo stop, which we've documented, ad infinitum here. And then we don't see Greer passing any sort of a lead car either, which Rich De La Rosa reported.
And of course, they had to merge the two shots. So he actually slumps forward after being hit in the back of the head. Jackie uses him back up. She's looking him right in the face when he's hit in the right temple by the frangible or exploding bullet. His brains are blown out to the left rear with such force that when they aim back with Officer Hargis, he himself thinks he's been shot. And then Jack slumps to the left. He slumps to the left. But when they merged those two shots, they took out too many frames and created this jerky, violent motion to the left and rear, which no one in Dealey Plaza reported.
All right. Question, fellas. Have any of you guys heard of, her name is Jean Hill?
That seems familiar somehow.
Yes, yeah.
All right, let's see what she had to say.
This is Jean Hill in Dallas. Could you tell us what you saw?
Yes, Mary and I had come down to see the president this morning, and we tried to get a place where we could be away from everyone, and we, I guess, succeeded. As the car came down the hill toward us, he was on our side of the street, and the president and Mrs. Kennedy were in the back seat, had a little dog between them looking at it, and just as the car came right in line with us, the president looked up, and just as he looked up, two shots rang out, and he grabbed his chest, and this real odd look came over his face, and he pitched forward onto her lap. And she jumped up over him and screamed and said, "My God, he's been shot." And there was just an instantaneous, sort of an instant pause, and the motorcade momentarily halted.
Wait, did it what?
Momentarily halted, and 2 or 4 more shots rang out, and they sped away real quickly. And that time I became aware of Mary tugging on my foot saying, "Get down there." It hadn't registered. I'd been so busy looking at the president.
You were in a very advantageous spot to see the president.
To see the president, but also to get shot.
How do you feel now? It's been several hours later, and you've talked to the police, given your story several times. Do you still believe that something like this really did happen here?
I don't think I ever could have believed it unless I had actually seen it. And when I saw the look come across his face, I knew that he'd been hit.
All right, there's just another, 2-bit witness right there saying the limo stopped. We got one more clip, so let's might as well play that one, and then we'll be done with the clips, and we can comment it on the way out. Here we go.
Had there been better reaction on the part of the driver? They were only yards from what at least I perceived to be safety by getting on the expressway. But the car seemed to it didn't move. After that first shot, it just didn't move. And the thing that has, over the years, continued to rather haunt me about the whole situation was the feeling that did that first shot miss, as I felt it had? If it did miss, had that car speeded up, would he be alive today?
All right, so there's Mary Woodward.
Yeah.
She wouldn't know anything either, you think?
Yeah, she was there, and she makes so many key points. Well, if the limo driver would have just floored it. So, I mean, and I think anybody with a brain would agree with Mary there that if the limo driver doesn't come to a complete halt, Kennedy probably doesn't get shot in the head 2 or 3 times. I mean, so how did Oswald edit this film when he was in custody in the Dallas police station on Friday night? Wasn't this thing edited on Friday night or Saturday?
Yeah, Larry, Dr. Fetzer has done work on the Haga lab and how much time and where it's all gone.
Oh yeah, Don, you weren't here when I gave a recap about what the technical errors that Robert Morningstar had wrong. When the original was taken to the National Photographic Interpretation Center on Saturday, it was an 8mm all-ray split film developed in Dallas, how the substitute was brought to the National Photographic Interpretation Center on Sunday. It was a 16 millimeter unsplit film, and that's where the switch was made. They had a briefing board prepared on Saturday, but a second on Sunday. And another misstatement by Robert was that those were missing frames between what they were featuring on the briefing boards. Those were the number of frames between the shots, so they could calculate the amount of time that it had taken to separate them to support the 3-shot scenario.
Well, I also want to add to that which we discussed last week about the blowout in the back of the head. We know that that blob that has been painted over in frames 313, 314, etc., vis-a-vis the blowout in the back of the head, which you discovered in the frame 374, and which later we also discovered earlier this year in 343, where Jackie's glove provided such a nice background, and where we saw the magnitude of the blowout in the back of the head. So that in itself tells us a lot about what transpired, when this film was edited that weekend.
You're absolutely right, Larry. Those are a very nice observation. I just like to make two remarks. One is that I think that Jefferson Morley ought to redesignate his site JFK Fiction, because that's very little to do with fact. And also that since Jim DiEugenio replaced me on Black Op Radio, the meaning of Black Op in relation to radio has assumed a whole different dimension.
Don, and Larry, weren't these people larger than life at one time? I was actually nervous to even contact someone like Jim Fetzer, and I actually will admit that I meekly walked up to Jim DiEugenio in Dealey Plaza one time to ask him a question, because he was the man. And just so many times people that we've looked up to have let us down, and that's where we're taking the time to show you just how bad it is. We're just talking the limo stop. So if 50 witnesses is not enough for you, then we have serious problems here. And you're going to take time to write an article about the rise and fall of Dr. Fetzer? We've got a problem. So
to me, my thought, if you can't get the Zapruder film right in JFK research, what are you doing in JFK research?
Well, what's most blatant, Don, is I published an over 500-page volume proving that the film was a fabrication in 2003. What year is it now?
It's not like it snuck up on anybody. Yeah, it's 2015.
I mean, there are only two choices. Either they're completely and utterly incompetent and have refused to familiarize themselves with the relevant evidence, or they are perpetrating a complete fraud on the public and other members of the JFK community to promote a political agenda. I don't think the choice between those alternatives is too tough to make, given what we know about what's going on here.
Yeah, it's possible that another one of the topics that might be brought up in that article might be your position on the Auction 6, Jim. So you want to just make a couple of comments?
That's very interesting, where, we have proof after proof of the alteration of the Auction 6, but what's so fascinating there is that he actually captured a man in the doorway who bears a striking resemblance to Lee Oswald. He has a similar height, he has a similar build, he has a similar appearance, he has similar clothing, he has a similar shirt, he has a similar t-shirt, and they want to say, no, that was actually a guy who was 3 inches shorter and 15 or 20 pounds heavier, is actually standing to his right as you look at the auctions, who actually went to the FBI on 29 February 1964 to show them the shirt he had been wearing at the time, which they had asked him to bring in, and duly photographed a short-sleeved, vertically striped red and white shirt, which bears no resemblance. So neither with respect to height or weight or build or clothing does Billy Lovelady resemble Lee Harvey Oswald, and yet when he was arrested, he was wearing a shirt strikingly similar to the shirt on the man in the doorway, a t-shirt similar to the man on the doorway. He was of a height similar to the man on the doorway. He was of a build similar to the man in the doorway. I mean, how ridiculous does this have to get? And then they proposed as an alternative this guy in the crowd wearing a red and black checkered shirt, which is buttoned up to the neck, whereas the shirt on the man in the doorway is splayed open all the way down to his navel. And they want to propose this guy who looks like a gorilla, who must outweigh the doorman by 50 pounds. It's supposed to be the man in the doorway. I can't believe the rubbish we get from people like Robert Broden and Tate Thompson and Jim DiEugenio and now Leno Sanik and Jefferson Morley. It's really pathetic. When I organized the Vancouver hearings in 2012, I visited Leno Sanik at his studio outside of Vancouver, and I did three interviews with Len for his 50 points about, of truth about the JFK for his series. I did one about the role of the Secret Service, explaining we have 15 indications of Secret Service complicity. And when I came right up to the point of talking about the limousine hold and some additional remarks, he cut it. He cut out those points. I did two others. I did one just on the limousine and the Zapruder film itself, going over point after point after point. He chose not to use it. I did another about the Algen 6 and the man in the doorway. He chose not to use it. I am stunned that Leno Sanik, with whom I co-hosted that show for many years, has turned out to be so utterly irresponsible, and now it would seem mentally despondent by agreeing with Jim DiEugenio on whatever Jim DiEugenio wants to throw out.
All right, well, they're not going to be escaping their audience as well. We did have a comment, and the comment was, and we'll close out the show, WTF, what the heck has gone wrong with Black Op Radio? What tripe are they trying to shovel here? Using Dr. Fetzer's name as a verb? He says they have had many, many guests who are purporting exactly what Dr. Fetzer is saying. So what is wrong here? So basically that comment brought the whole show here tonight.
Well,
So
there's truth in advertising to this extent, Gary. They do advertise themselves as a black op.
Yes.
One last point I would make is if Black Op Radio is using Fetzer's name as a verb, so does Judy Wood. So perhaps they're in the same ilk now as the Judy Woods of the world.
All right. Black Op Radio, the show the NSA wants you to hear. We'll see you next week. This has been JFK 74. Thanks, fellas.